What if I told you a GOP candidate said it's okay to kill gay people, was running for office, was a credible candidate, and let's put his picture up full mass here. I got some background. Scott Esk, 56 years of age. When asked recently about his statements referencing stoning gay people, he did not disavow his comments. Scott ran for election to the Oklahoma House of Representatives to represent District 87. Thankfully, he lost the Republican primary runoff, but remember, credible candidate, pretty well funded, and forced to run off. In 2013, good old Scott here was commenting in a Facebook conversation about the Pope and said he couldn't judge gay people. Scott posted some Bible quotations, including the part of Romans 1 where the Bible says that a long list of people who sinned are worthy of death. What Scott left out is that it included people that lie and other things. It's an interesting quote. When asked about this, Scott said, this was a quote, Adam Bates said, so just to be clear, you think we should execute homosexuals by stoning, and to think people are worried about the Muslims taking over, haha. Scott says, I think we would be totally in the right to do it. That goes against some parts of libertarianism, I realize. And I'm largely libertarian, but ignoring as a nation things that are worthy of death is very remiss. Let's put his picture up again. So according to his religious ideology, his understanding of theology, his understanding of spirituality, he believes that people should simply kill other individuals who have a different way of life than he does. That's what he believes. Interesting to note, once again, he does have significant support in the GOP. Have you heard of any leader in the Republican Party denouncing him? No, the man has literally advocated for murder. Nobody is coming against him. Nobody is saying this guy does not belong in our party. Nobody is challenging him to say, stop saying these ridiculous things, not in his own party. A year later, a journalist posed the question about those comments when he was running for office. Here it is.
What I will tell you right now is that that was done in the Old Testament under a law that came directly from God. And in that time, it was totally just. It came directly from God. I have no plans to reinstitute that in Oklahoma law. I do have some very huge moral misgivings about those kinds of sins, and I think that those kind of sins will not do our country any good, and it certainly doesn't do anything to preserve the family.
Killing people does not preserve the family, and advocating for killing people does not help the country. But once again, those points are lost on people like him. That's why I say clearly God gave me a brain before he gave me a book. After those comments, he put out a long video where he claimed he sets the record straight. In those videos, he claimed he has compassion on anybody in the grips of an addiction such as homosexuality. That's what he calls it. He says an addiction. Let's go to the next one.
I consider that there is and always has been help for homosexuals wanting to get out of homosexuality, and I consider that it's an addiction, a very insidious one that's challenging. Any addiction is hard to come out of. Any Christian should be in the position to say that this is sin or this is good, and if we don't make that distinction, we're not going to help people. Some states are having homosexual marriage enshrined, and you can see what happens in those states, that they become unstable. Their family becomes very much in danger. Children become unprotected from these kind of predations. Part of the benefit of getting the government out of education, sex education, is handled by quite a bit differently than in public schools. The militant homosexual groups are not allowed to be a big part of that. like they are in the public education industry. Because let's face it, homosexuals cannot reproduce, so they have to recruit if they're going to replenish their numbers. I have compassion on anybody who is in the grips of an insidious addiction such as homosexuality, and wish to help them. I never did move for expanding the death penalty to discourage that.
Just silly, ridiculous, not factual. But once again, ideology like this is supported in the Republican Party. We do not have a religious government. As a matter of fact, the framers of the Constitution, as flawed as they were fleeing people like him. They did not want religious or theocratic rule. They wanted a secular government. Secular government dictates a secular position when it comes to dynamics like this. There's a distinct distinction, there's a distinct separation, and it should remain. But individuals like him would like to blur the lines. They want to make their religious belief law. There's more. In another video, which was from earlier this year, Esk called a local TV news report on his comments, called it a hit piece on the fact that I had an opinion against homosexuality. Here it is.
Channel 4 a few days ago came up with a hit piece on the fact that I had an opinion against homosexuality. Well, does that make me a homophobe? Maybe some people think it does, but as far as I and many of the people, the voters of House District 87 are concerned, it simply makes me a Christian. Christians believe in biblical morality, kind of by definition, or they should. I'm aware of how homosexuality was handled in the Old Testament. It was commanded by God to put homosexuals to death in the Old Testament. And even in the New Testament, in Romans chapter 1, it says that homosexuality is a sin worthy of death. I'm not for expanding the death penalty in Oklahoma for homosexuality, but the fact remains that it's much more offensive knowing what obscene things homosexuals do with each other than it is for somebody to hold a view that it is indecent.
Let's put up his picture again, full mass. Let me remind everyone that we have covered a few preachers and Christians and Christian evangelicals who have been completely anti-homosexual lifestyle. They have been pro-violence against those who are in the LGBTQ community. We have seen that from people like Jesse Lee Peterson and others. Well, come to find out, they happen to be gay, which it would not surprise me if this individual happened to be gay himself, based on recent reporting. There's more. The Oklahoman recently was asked about those comments. He refused to do an interview and pointed out the Oklahoman who to the two videos, I've stood up for what is right in the past, he says, and I intend to in the future, and I am right now, he stated. That's got me in trouble. The media, not my friends, as far as I'm concerned. All right, he did not win his election yesterday. He did force a runoff, still remains very credible within the GOP ranks. But once again, he's not the only person with the ideology. There are other people that believe just like he believes. It's unfortunate, but real. A.B, thoughts here?
Well, I think it's a good thing he didn't win because he clearly doesn't understand his job. We are not governed by the Bible. We are governed by the Constitution. Therefore, you don't get to make those types of decisions about how people live their life. And I think there's also this misconception that you're painting the picture that same-sex couples don't reproduce or they don't have healthy marriages, and that's inaccurate. So I think even if he disagrees with how people choose to love, he needs to be realistic about where his personal stance and his religious stance start to blur how we govern our states and our country.
Yeah,
I'm glad he didn't win.
Very well said.